we're going to begin this show talking about the escalation of not only the ICE out of LA riots going on in Los Angeles, but also the feud that has ensued between Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom, and virtually all of the most prominent Republicans trying to dogpile on him. To catch you all up to speed, there have been massive anti ICE protests going on in Los Angeles for the last 4 or 5 days or so. The people there are protesting, they are practicing civil disobedience against the illegal and unconstitutional kidnappings and dragnets that ICE is conducting all throughout the city. These protests have also spread all throughout the entirety of the country. Beyond California, states like New York, Texas, Florida, Illinois have massive immigrant populations, not only just immigrants, but Hispanic immigrants in general. There are ongoing protests all throughout the country with this same substance. In Los Angeles, the LAPD, the Highway Patrol, and all of the state and local law enforcement agencies were deployed to keep these protesters in check. Of course, that situation has since escalated. Donald Trump, however, launched himself into this foray by deploying originally 2,000 National Guard troops, but now an additional 2,000 National Guard troops to go in and effectively quell this protest, or attempt to quell this protest. This was against the wishes of Governor Newsom. It is tremendous federal overreach for Donald Trump to behave in this manner. Newsom is suing the Trump administration for this. The LAPD even said that they had everything under control. They did not need any interference from any of these national agencies. There are now several hundred active duty Marines who had been deployed to there as well. All throughout all of this, there are Republicans, and Republicans are targeting Gavin Newsom, and Democrats as a whole, trying to say this is what life is going to be like under a Democratic presidency, even though this is what life is like right now under a Republican presidency. Furthermore, specifically with Trump and Newsom, there is mixed signals coming from both of their respective camps. Trump is saying that he had reached out to Governor Newsom recently. Gavin Newsom is disputing that there has seemingly been no contact in between these two individuals within or over the last couple of days. There was even a clip on Fox News that Jesse Waters showed on his show that was an edited clip attempting to show that Donald Trump tried to reach out to Gavin Newsom. In this instance, it is not on Gavin Newsom to reach out to the president. It is on the president to reach out to Gavin Newsom even before all of this unfolded. If I'm the president and there's a protest going on in Texas or Florida or Missouri, and I reach out to Governor DeSantis or Governor Greg Abbott and ask them if they want the National Guard deployed, and they say no, I'm not going to deploy them. That is, as I mentioned before, gross federal overreach. In the aftermath of this, Gavin Newsom has, of course, been on a politic tour, doing speeches against Donald Trump. He's been on a posting frenzy, and we will get into that in a little bit. We're going to start with his speech against Donald Trump. This was an 8-minute long address, an 8.5-minute long address, where he effectively clowned on President Trump. He clowned on the Republican Party. I have a love-hate relationship with Gavin Newsom. I think that in terms of policy, he is terrible. He is objectively horrific when it comes to advancing an actually populist political agenda. However, when it comes to playing politics, there is nobody better than Gavin Newsom. When it comes to liberal theater, liberal aesthetics, nobody in the Democratic Party encapsulates this better than Gavin Newsom. That is why I hate him, because he does not have the policy prescription that aligns with how effective he is at being a politician. I've said multiple times on this show before, Gavin Newsom's politics, or his ability to play politics in conjunction with the policy plan of a Bernie Sanders or an AOC, would would have the Democrats experience a 1936 style electoral landslide. I truly believe that. Inside of me, there are two wolves. One of them is a socialist who hates Gavin Newsom, and the other is a liberal who loves Gavin Newsom for these exact reasons. Everybody, I don't care how far left or far right you are on the political spectrum, everybody has liberal sensibilities, at least a little bit. After all, that is all a part of the system that we have existed in, that we have grown up in. When we see politicians who are all buttoned up like Gavin Newsom is in this address, we get libbed up. But it's important to remember that there is more to politics than aesthetics. In fact, that is why liberalism is so damaging, because it hyper focuses on the optics of a situation, on the aesthetics of a situation, and attempts to distract from the actual substance. In this instance, the optics of the LA protests, of the anti-ICE protests going on in LA, choose to focus on the Waymo self-driving cars being lit on fire. The issue with this, and the issue with this type of thinking in general, is that you're opting to focus on the destruction of corporate property and not the toddlers who are being ripped away from their parents by ICE. You choose to focus on the destruction of corporate owned property and not families being ripped apart and having their members kidnapped and detained by the Gestapo. You choose to focus on the destruction of private property and not on the trauma that is being thrust upon undocumented migrants and really just immigrants as a whole. That is damaging. That is damaging to the protest. It is, if you want to discuss these optics, I am open to a very small conversation about that. But overall, I think that that discussion is unproductive. I do also think that the purposeful destruction of property is unproductive. But you also have to understand that these protesters are oftentimes pushed to those actions by the escalatory nature of the police departments, of the National Guard coming in. If the LAPD actually cared about helping to preserve and allow these folks to exercise their First Amendment right, they would not show up in riot gear. They would not show up with rubber bullets and tear gas. They would allow these folks to vent their frustrations. And then the federal government, in an ideal world, and obviously I'm not being pragmatic when I talk idealistically, the federal government would listen to the wishes of these protesters and attempt to work with them. With all of that said, let's go ahead and listen to gruesome Gavin Newsom addressing the American public. This video is courtesy of CNN. I'm going to watch this on 1.25 speed because it is an 8-minute long address and we do have various other topics to discuss today, but let's hear what this guy has to say.
What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different.
Keep in mind, as he mentioned in the beginning, he listed actual reasons as to why these people are protesting. ICE is coming in and destroying the fabrics of these communities. They are doing targeted kidnappings all throughout California, all throughout the country. They are ruining these people's lives. They are destroying their families. They are altering the fabric of these communities. And I'm not just talking about from an economic perspective, because I've talked about that previously, the monetary ramifications of this, but the societal impact as well. You are not only breaking up these family members, but you are attempting to deport people who play a valuable role in their communities, whether they own a laundromat, whether they work at a clinic as a PA. Immigrants all across the country play a massive role in helping to keep this country afloat. And again, keep in mind, the United States is a nation of immigrants, whether that immigration has been voluntary in the form of Eastern and Southern European immigration all throughout the early 1900s, as my family came over here during that time, whether that be Asian immigration, whether that be involuntary immigration in the form of the African slave trade. Immigrants have built this country. I understand, like, economically, but socially as well. The reason why the United States is such a fascinating place to live is because you do have all of these unique cultures that manage to come together and form one culture that is the United States.
What then ensued was a use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
What I don't like about this framing, attempting to paint the protesters as rioters, is that it entirely erases any context from the situation. Governor Newsom just mentioned how all of these agents and all of these respective law enforcement agencies showed up with rubber bullets and tear gas. He apparently does not recognize that that is inherently escalatory in nature. These protesters are not going out to protest for the sake of assaulting police officers, for the sake of breaking into businesses. They are pushed to this behavior. There are countless videos on social media that show these riot officers just flat out assaulting protesters just for coming up to them and like calling them a pig or saying something mean to them. Maybe Governor Newsom should focus on also prosecuting those people, because as far as I'm concerned, if you're a police officer and you're stationed at a protest to keep it peaceful and you do anything to incite violence, you should be charged as such.
Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more.
God, it's gonna take me forever to get through this video. This is a very crucial point, and this is what I mean when I say that, like, Gavin Newsom gets everybody libbed up because unfortunately, he's cooking a little bit with this. I hate to admit it, but listen, sometimes the worst person you know makes a good point. Los Angeles County is fucking enormous. The protests were confined to a very small portion of downtown Los Angeles. The hysteria about LA being on fire and being a war zone is just entirely false.
More than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces, not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities, they're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the
This
way,
is not dissimilar at all to anything that I have said all throughout this mass deportation operation. If there's no way to distinguish if somebody is a citizen or not, then everybody is a non-citizen. And if you are stripping civil rights away from non-citizens, ruined you've ruined the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, every protection guaranteed from the or protections guaranteed to you against the United States government. This is what I try to highlight in commentary surrounding this, because even if you're a natural born citizen like I am, even if like regardless of what your race is, but particularly someone with my archetype, it will start with undocumented immigrants. It will then continue to with people who have temporary protected status. It will then go to natural born US citizens. And then they come for people who criticize Israel. And then they come for people who criticize the Trump administration. And then next thing you know, it's 2026 and we live in the Trump states of America. This is arguably the most pressing issue in the country right now, is the gross mistreatment of immigrants and the potential erosion of civil rights for all 350 million people that live in the United States of America.
Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, at threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday.
I think that that's fucking crazy, man. Listen, as much as I dislike Gavin Newsom, I think the reaction to this part of the equation has been a little underwhelming. Granted, I think coverage from mainstream media about these protests has been gross, but the fact that high-ranking Republicans, including Donald Trump, but also Mike Johnson, who's like the third most powerful person in the federal government, are openly advocating for Gavin Newsom to be arrested is fucking insane. Could you imagine if Joe Biden jokingly threatened to arrest Greg Abbott? Like, forget even that. Could you imagine if Joe Biden made a joke about Greg Abbott not being able to walk? Conservatives would piss their pants and then piss their spouse's pants as they bitched and moaned and cried about how mean the Biden administration is. Meanwhile, none of these fucking dipshits have anything to say about Gavin Newsom's potential arrest from Donald Trump.
Our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live and die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
That was a blistering speech.
That is the closing statement from Governor of California, Gavin Newsom. I think he mentioned something very prescient there by saying that California is the first, but it certainly will not be the last. It is for reasons like this that I find Donald Trump to be staggeringly incompetent. Mind you, Governor Newsom is doing the bare minimum here. I'm going to give him the lightest of applause because this is what you are supposed to do as an elected representative. When you hold state government, it is your duty to protect your citizens, whether that be from the federal government, whether that be from corporations. And while Gavin Newsom is, of course, a cuck to the same corporate overlords as everyone else in the political establishment, he welcomes a fight against any Republican, including Donald Trump, who could have been his father, who could have been his father-in-law, because as we all know, who did Donald Jr.'s wife go out with before him? Yep, that's right. It was Gavin Newsom. For this reason, I think that is a serious miscalculation by Donald Trump, because Gavin Newsom thrives in instances like this. Much like every other politician, he is incredibly narcissistic. He loves the spotlight. And what better spotlight than this, going head to head with the President of the United States of America? Gavin Newsom is also well equipped to deal with this kind of back and forth. Like, as the governor of California, I don't think people quite understand the responsibility that entails. You are effectively like the president of a medium-sized nation. There's 40 million people that live in California. It is the largest economy in the United States and the 5th largest economy in the world. You are a very notable politician. Gavin Newsom he just has all of the requisite aesthetic skills to be able to deal with this. And again, I must give him the lightest round of applause for actually standing up to Donald Trump, because the Republican Party is trying to set a precedent in this regard. If they can do this in California, then they can do this in New York. They can do this in Massachusetts. They can do this in Washington and Oregon. They can effectively bully all of the other smaller Democratic states. And Gavin Newsom is going to do everything in his power to fight that. Of course, again, I cannot say this enough. He is absolutely doing the bare minimum, but at least he's providing a little bit of entertainment. That entertainment coming in the form of his almost schizophrenic levels of posting on Twitter over the last couple of days. His social team is absolutely having a field day. They're absolutely having a field day with this, and I will say, like, they are getting people libbed up. He's gone after J.D. Vance. He's gone after Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma, and we're going to peruse his Twitter page and take a look at some of the greatest hits from Governor Gavin Newsom. I am going to start with him putting his balls all over Stephen Miller's shiny bald head. Stephen Miller goes, "Didn't you have a quote unquote, didn't you have a problem?" In reply to Gavin Newsom's quote tweet of J.D. Vance, "Your state is a criminal sanctuary for millions of illegal alien invaders, cartel killers, foreign terrorists, transnational gangs, and insurrectionist mobs. Huge swaths of the city where I was born now resemble failed third world nations, a ruptured, balkanized society of strangers. When our courageous ICE officers, fighting to rescue your communities, came under violent attack, organized attack, you and the LA mayor left them, unforgivably, to fend for themselves. When the rioters swarmed, you handed over your streets willingly. You refused to arrest and prosecute the arsonists, seditionists, and insurrectionists. This administration is fighting to save the city and the citizens you have left to struggle and suffer." A whole lot of nothing here from Stephen Miller. He just wants to be racist on the timeline. Again, like, no one asked for ICE to be there. No one asked for any federal force to be there. Gavin Newsom replies, "The only people defending insurrectionists are you and real Donald Trump, or are we pretending like you didn't pardon 1,500 of them?" Very good point. I want Democrats to continue to not only talk about the pardonings, but talk about the pardons, including people who not only arrested police officers, but are actual pedophiles and have committed sex crimes against children. I will, however, criticize Gavin Newsom. I do have to criticize him on this tweet, because I would not have even given Stephen Miller the time of day with any of this, like, actual logical bullshit. All he should have said was, "Elon Musk is fucking your wife." That's it. Conversation over. Stephen Miller is a cuck. Elon Musk is having relations with his wife. That's all you have to say to this guy. We have to, like, that should also be a talking point from the Democrats. Just keep mentioning Elon Musk and Stephen Miller's wife being involved with one another. Like, bully him. I want to see him cry. I want to see these fucking ghouls be sad on the timeline. I don't think that they should be able to live peaceful existences. Here is another tweet. Quote tweeting Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the I don't even know. Was she a failed presidential nominee? I think she was. "What's happening in California would never happen here in Arkansas because we value order over chaos. President Donald Trump does too, which is why we're doing what Governor Newsom won't." And he tweets, "Your homicide rate is literally double California's." Now, this is a recurring theme here. Something that a lot of politicians from Republican states don't want to acknowledge is that a lot of their states, in terms of violent crime, are unsafer than blue states. You are like 3 times more likely to be murdered in Florida than you are in New York. The murder rate of Jacksonville is, I think, like 3 times the murder rate of New York City. There are various reasons for this. One of them being is that red states don't attempt to regulate firearms in any degree. This, of course, not only includes homicides, but suicides as well. We see a staggering number of suicides in red states compared to blue states. But he hit this also when going after Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma as well. We will get to that a little bit later. Rapid Response 47, which is a Trump Glaze, account from the White House, tweeted, Gavin Newsom claims President Trump is traumatizing our communities by taking criminal, illegal immigrant killers, rapists, gangbangers, drug dealers, human traffickers, and domestic abusers off the streets. Gavin Newsom said, was the 4-year-old the gangbanger? Was the pregnant woman the rapist? We go after serious violent criminals in California. That's not what we are doing. I understand this is very liberal coded, but he is also correct. The Trump administration cannot stage mass deportations without trying to label everybody as a criminal, which we know is factually incorrect. The overwhelming majority, like 99% of undocumented, okay, maybe it's not that high. I'm being hyperbolic here. The large majority of undocumented immigrants are not criminals. They are law-abiding citizens. In fact, natural-born U.S. citizens are far more likely to commit crimes than undocumented immigrants. The framing of this is only for the Trump administration to justify their mass deportations, especially this newfound quota of 3,000 deportations per day. You cannot do those levels of deportations without also deporting law-abiding citizens. VA Secretary Doug Collins, not a legendary NBA head coach Doug Collins. He says Governor Newsom has repeatedly put the interests of illegal immigrants and criminals above those of hardworking citizens, and now Los Angeles veterans are paying the price. He responds, your dear leader sent American troops here without fuel, water, or food. If anyone should be worried about disrespecting those that serve our nation, it should be your administration. Now, where are the receipts on this? I will show you, because Gavin Newsom has a bunch of fucking Gen Zers on his social media team, because he's been on top of this over the last couple of days. I have to give them credit. He posted a picture of the National Guardsmen having to sleep on each other because the Trump administration just sent them there without a plan. Mark Wayne Mullen, the left is claiming pro-illegal alien mob violence in LA is the result of federal law enforcement presence. Literally nobody believes that. America is sick of illegal immigration and weak, lawless liberal leadership. Now Newsom is suing POTUS. Rich, this guy is just
by restoring law and order. Now,
this guy has
police of LA has already said
no aura. There was also people were dunking on him because he hid in fear, rightfully so, might I add, during January 6th when the insurrectionists were storming the fucking Capitol. He said, Gavin Newsom says, if you want to discuss violence, let's start with your state's murder rate, which is 40% higher than California. Now, Mark Wayne Mullen thought he cooked here. Oklahoma is ranked 48th in education. Remember that. And said, it's weird that California has the most murders in the country. Is it not? The community note rightfully pointed out that California has more murders than anywhere else because it has the largest population. This is statistics 101. If you want to make an appropriate statistical comparison between two populations that are not equal, you have to go by per capita. You have to equate the values somehow. This is him quote tweeting, ASIN, when is the last time you spoke with Governor Newsom? President Trump. A day ago, I called him up to called him up to tell him, got to do a better job. He's doing a bad job, causing a lot of death and potential death. Gavin Newsom clears the record. There was no call, not even a voicemail. Americans should be alarmed that a president deploying Marines onto our streets doesn't know who he's talking to. I mean, he's fucking 80 years old. He's very clearly mental. There is very clear cognitive decline with Donald Trump. I touched on this before. Mike Johnson,
that's not my lane. I'm not going to.
When pressed about, or when asked if Gavin Newsom should face legal consequences, this is what he had to say.
The president said, possibly in jest, that if he were Tom Homan, he would arrest Gavin Newsom. Do you believe that Newsom should face consequences in a legal way?
That's not my lane. I'm not going to give you legal analysis on whether Gavin Newsom should be arrested, but he ought to be tarred and feathered. I'll say that. I mean, look, he's standing in the way of
And this bitch is
the
laughing. Shut the fuck up. Like, is this not jarring to anybody that a very prominent member of the federal government is advocating to punish the sitting governor of a Democratic state by way of tar and feathering, but yet he is somehow unqualified to speak on the legal practice of this, to which Gavin Newsom says, good to know we're skipping the arrest and going straight for the 1700 style form of punishment, a fitting threat given the GOP wants to bring our country back to the 18th century. Again, the interns on this are actually dominating social media right now. He then went on Pod Save America. He did a little bit of an interview there for, I think it was like 3 minutes or so. He famously before said come and get me when Tom Homan was like, we're gonna arrest Gavin Newsom. This is JD Vance quote tweeting Gavin Newsom saying, do your job, that's all we're asking. Again, I think this was a little bit of a miss by Gavin Newsom. He says, do your job. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. Rescind the order, return control to California. I think he should have just instead made a joke about JD Vance's mom abandoning him. He should have made a joke, JD Vance, why don't you go get a couch job or something? I'm sick of politicians trying to be civil when the opposition is very clearly not that. People talk about civility in modern politics. That shit is gone. That has been gone for like 25 years at this point. There's no being civil with Republican lawmakers. They are sick, twisted, demented individuals who don't give a fuck about anything beyond advancing their white supremacist agenda. I don't care. I don't give a fuck about the optics of Gavin Newsom being mean to JD Vance. Like, I want to bully JD Vance. I want Stephen Miller to feel bullied. These people deserve it. And if you think they don't deserve it, why don't you think about all of the harm and all of the pain that they are causing on so many different kinds of marginalized communities, on so many types of vulnerable individuals. Maybe think about that for a second and then come and talk to me about being civil with these fucking barbarians.